Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. To bring a third movie of What If Lupin the Third meets the mercenary clan. Link description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this isn't a scam. Act 3 Chapter 1 Lockdown. In the boarding school that Amy was in, she was hard for her to make some friends because of her awkward with many of the other girls in the boating school. However, she came across one being more like a girl of Indian descendants and using a bow and arrow. However, the Indian girl known as Dolma for Amy to be her own self. Which Amy decided to agree to what Dolma said. Buzzer, the bird Cybertronian minicon of Sound Blaster was watching from a far distance. Meanwhile, at Lupin's hideout of getting the bloody teardrop jewel from the princess. Is much how we're doing laundry. See that Jigen always keeps on having the same laundry. Meanwhile, back in the school, the food you go disguising yourself as a teacher was also however Amy was getting along with Dolma. Somewhere else in the city, in a bus, a group of armed individuals were making her way to the school. However, Amy using the eye to call for help. However, many of the terrorist groups able to. However, the men were able to infiltrate the school, keeping many people as hostages. However, in the police department area, inspectors in Agata also tried calling the school as well. However, it didn't do anything. However, with Lupin inside of the vehicle form of Sound Blaster in a jeep. Lupin in the driver alongside, Jigen and Gomon in the passenger seats of Sound Blaster's vehicle form. And there's the school, Lupin said. So that's where we're gonna find the princess and that bloody teardrop, Jigen said. Well as Emi. Geoman said. However, as the vehicle came to a halt as the construction workers were nearby. Sorry, guys. Fuck. The road is closed. Construction worker said, you people have business at the school. Another construction worker said, no, sir. We're heading to a museum up ahead. Lupin said. Well, I see. Well, I'm real sorry. Sorry about it. There's no way I can let you through here, the road like this. The other construction worker said. Oh, man. That sucks. Just like that, they turn around going. Is that about a museum? Jigen said, confused. The guards that I dropped Amy off or aren't there now, Lupin said. And speaking of which, these new guys are packing some serious heat as a tablet was able to detect no internet or Wi-Fi nearby. Something's blocking a signal. Looks like trouble found us again, Jigen said. With all the curtains drawn up, they could have shot into place, and we wouldn't have no clue, Lupin said. Are we turning back? Gomon said. You wish. Time for us to do what thieves do and sneak in. And speak of which, time to call in the rest of the mercenary buddies of your Sound Blaster. Lupin said to Sound Blaster in vehicle form. Right on it. Sound Blaster said in vehicle form. In the auditorium, many of the female students were even more. As Amy tried to seduce the guard. However, only for Fujiko to came in and knock him out by Fujiko going to sign to actually taunt Amy that made Amy kind of got mad. And as one of the guard, so-called terrorist groups, trying to however, Fujiko came in a bit half naked, which many of the so-called terrorists didn't actually find it flirtatious. Which Amy and Fujiko came up with a plan to using glow in a dark liquid that, as well. However, as Lupin and his gang were able to take down as many as this mercenary clan cyber you're able to take down many of the terrorists. However, it wasn't easy for them to see if they had to bash their waist through narrow hallways. As Lupin entered one of the classroom, alongside Sound Blaster, which may indeed, so rather surprised, see the side of a Cybertronian, which Sound Blaster didn't actually pay attention as much. Well, it looks like we're about done here. Hey, Emi. Pitched money to girls. However, Amy came to see Dolma. However, a teacher turned out to be none other than a CIA agent. That's when the moment when one of the other Cybertronians noticed CIA helicopter. As a student turned out to be Princess Dolma. Act 3 Chapter 2 Kingdom of Padar. In the aftermath of the incident of the terrorist, many of the students and staff of the boarding school were able to. As the CIA helicopter taking Padar, as the teacher turned out to be. Which Lupin and the gang, alongside the mercenary Cybertronians, decide also go to Padar as well. And just like that, the group were able to make it to Padar as well, alongside many of the Cybertronians in vehicle form. However, Afterburner couldn't, only leaving the bug bite, Night Bird, 6-shot, double-cross to actually go on ahead in vehicle forms as cars. After Princess Dolma being rescued from her terrorist captures by the CIA agent and the American Special Forces. Jigen said, reading the article, that's the cover story. The CIA also had a hand in the attack in the first place. Wow. Talk about some people want some recognitions. Talk about human greed is always something. Always something. 6-shot said in vehicle form as a car. As the car stopped in vehicle form. Outside traffic isn't allowed in a new district. On one side is a new district that's built by the Shake Hands Corporation and the famous IT company. And on the other side you have the historic old town. Lupin said. Humanity does have a strange way of evolving and also living in its culture, Soundblaster said in vehicle form. No kidding. Some people prefer what their traditions, while others prefer to move on into more modernization times. Nightbird said in vehicle car form. However, an artificial self-driving car came along. What is your destination? The AI said. Who's that? Geoman said. Hey, did the car just say something? Jigen said. Mr. Daisuke Jigen, welcome to the kingdom of Padar. The AI of the car said. What the hell? Jigen said, even more freaked out. Would you like me to take you to a new Padar hotel? The AI said. It even knows our reservations too. What's going on here? Jigen said, even more confused. Well, when we cross the border, remember where we have to say we're staying. The idea is to use our biometrics to serve as of our every need to do our stay in the city. Lupin said, which Jigen wasn't able to actually take a smoke. However, many of the mercenaries transform into robot modes, decide to take a walk as the driverless car was taking them to a nearby place, as many of the citizens of Padar using AI and advanced tech as well, including delivery as well. Bujigo was able to. As a guy, it was trying to flirt with him, but decide not to, which however, helicopter was suspiciously flying by. However, many people take pictures of the Cybertronian mercenaries, which decide not to pay attention as much. Was getting information about, but would you go try using your phenom type trying to get information? Meanwhile, Lupin and Jigen decided to sneak into the place as well. Using was he looking to a military place, and one of the guards explained about a special exercise. However, there was a rift between the reformers and the tradition. However, we like that there will be a coup d'etat. However, the monk talking to two military. Amongst the CIA agents and another American. However, what did you call disguise as one of the staff? Could tell something big was also happening as well. Even many of the Cybertronian mercenary clans staying in the shadows also could tell something else was happening within the shadows. On the tower, she was doing a dance. Our military groups were happening. However, Lupin disguised as inspector also was able to. However, Lupin was able to sneak across. Another places of Shake Hands was being infiltrated by Fujiko. Amy was able to get into the tower. The CIA agent was strangling Amy slowly and painfully. Lupin was able to manage to make it in the nick of time. What are you even doing here? I'm guessing you CIA goons who are pulling the strings entire coup. Aren't you? Probably in the name of world peace or some other kind of bullshit. But all you really want to make things more convenient for yourself compared to guys like me. Who really admit, crooks, you're still the reason steer. Lupin said, mocking the CIA agent. Just shut up, the CIA agent said. But I won't. You think you're untouchable. Just because you have a sizable country with a best army and mountains of cash. Is that it? Why won't you get over yourselves? Lupin said smugly. Whatever you're stalling, it won't work, the CIA agent said. Oh, shut up. If you're going a lab dog, let's stick to howling like one. However, only for the CIA to try to shoot Lupin, only for Lupin to use some strings to attach him, which Lupin was able to disarm him without hurting him. Do you see, that's the thing for life and royalty. You just really gotta take things seriously. As Amy ran over happy to see him. Lupin, Amy said. Hey, Amy. Are you okay? Well, what are you doing here? Amy said. What do you think? I'm here to get you, Lupin said. As Dolma was here, happy. However, only Lupin gets shot by an arrow in the lower part of his body, causing him to collapse on the ground. As Amy tried to actually check on Lupin. Act 3 Chapter 3 Martial Law. Lupin was on the ground shot by the arrow. Dolma, we both came to Padar just to rescue you, Emmy said. Yes, thank you. However, it's too late, Dolma said, as a group of armed men came in. However, many of the people of the Padar severed many of the internet, causing many of the internet to be severed, unable for Emmy to access. As a smoke grenade loadout for Fujiko were able to successfully escape. However, the king and the two shake hands executives were never to be found. As martial law has began. Meanwhile, another part of the city. Many of the Cybertronians were able to take down many of the guards, unable to combat Cybertronians. Well, damn, things are really escalating. 6 shots said as him and Bugbite and Nightbird were transformed to vehicle forms of cars, driving off as quickly as possible. What the hell is going on here? Jigen said, as both of them were inside of the vehicle form of Sound Blaster. I don't know, but I got bad feeling about this. I wonder where Lupin could be, Jigen said. You too, what are you doing out there? However, as going around checking inside of Sound Blaster's vehicle form got away at quickest possibility. However, Princess Padar also wanted Emmy to be spared. However, Fujiko and Emmy were able to help Lupin treat his wounds, which they're able to do some old-fashioned surgery to move their arrow. However, let's just say, would you go on the other hand, God, I've been naked in getting that result. However, having a remembering of the old times. Next morning, Lupin was still unconscious. However, for an elderly woman was able to call the police or the military, was able to found the fugitive. Meanwhile, in the other district that Jigen and Geoman were at the hotel so more concerned about Lupin. As Gomon thought to himself that did a flipper never needed their aid somewhere else. As Senegana also entered Fadar as well. Have a feeling that Lupin was also here as well. I'm boarding the airship. Enzo, so the people were discussing about evolution and ideology as well. Meanwhile, back with Lupin. However, Portugal is a getaway. However, luckily, MA was able to hack into a nearby AI drone, airship, and just like that. Now we're able to throw a grenade into the armored truck full of soldiers. However, Rodrigo abandoned both Emmy and Lupin, which she didn't care as much. For that, she's nothing more of a selfless, self-hearted, gold-digger whore, only cared for money. As Emmy, hiding from a drone. However, a guard was able to only for a tank to appear and ram the soldier over, killing him. As I transfer into his robot form, none other than 6 shot. Looks like I finally came in a nick of time. 6 shot said, looking down at Lupin, who's still unconscious but couldn't help but smile, giving a weak thumbs up. Thank you, Amy said. However, Fujiko was trapped. As it turned out, she was surrounded by a bunch of the Padar guards. However, one Padar guard informed them that the king was actually alive, which many of them started questioning about what they were doing is right or wrong. However, the airship started to crash. However, one soldier decided to run into a shed, which the captain then revealed itself, the soldier, which the captain decided to go ahead and try to shoot him doing something stupid. However, Fujiko told him to stay away. Just tell me, Lupin, what am I to you anyway? Fujiko said, having a stern look at Lupin, which Lupin did not respond. Eat lead, you damn thief. The commander's soldiers are pointing the rifle only for the ship to come hot. Fujiko, you are as the airship crashed if a little familiar to survive that or not. Or Fujiko as well, surviving the airship that crash landed. Act 3 Chapter 4 The Light for Padar. As Jigen and Gomon, alongside many of the Cybertronians hiding in plain sight, trying not to actually get caught by any of the Padar soldiers, which go on and she can decide to also go and infiltrate the place. Looking at it, Padar Colonel is able to drive on. Was able to show the bloody tear explain out the plan, moving with the door for a private military. A private military thinks to shake hands is able to get the internet back up and running, as many of the soldiers of Adar also were surprised to see the king of Adar, as the king was able to make an announcement to the whole country of Padar as well, explaining about everything. Setting a gun in some parts of the try not to get in the crossfire. Inspector Zenigata surprised to see Fujiko. As Zenigata was willing to do whatever it took, even if it means going into a civil war zone. Fujiko didn't care about Lupin. And the High Priest was also disappointed as well. Onboard airship as Enzo wanted was more for humanity to evolve, seeing that the past is nothing more but a relic of what's about it. Explaining about that the future of Sheikhang is always the future of humanity's evolution, and everything is nothing but a forgotten relic of the past. And so not to himself. Princess Dolma couldn't help but felt how much that our nation has become more than just a waste of war. Lupin disguise is one of the Colonel elite force. However, Lupin as part of the disguise was able to take down the two guards. Was able to hack into the system, but Lupin couldn't help but be happy. However, considering that the whole thing seems to be nothing more but a cult. How are the priests? Had a fake created? As it turned out to be none other, Lupin also came along as well. However, many of the guards tried to aim fire. As turned out to be none other than Jigen and Gomon in disguise. However, the priest tried to bribe him, but Lupin didn't fall for any of that bullshit. However, but what the priest did not realize that he was being broadcast in across all of Padar. As Enzo also, look at the broadcast, couldn't help but be happy. The DGES in France. Seeing that Albert knew that I was actually Lupin planning this. However, made the guards of Adar, which made the guards. Guards also were pissed off and angry, as Lupin couldn't help but smile. However, many guards also questioned Princess Domo as well, also siding alongside the priests. As many of the Padar soldiers didn't want to let America infest their country. However, the CIA agent also had a past about a civil war happening long time ago when he was a kid. Praying to either God or the devil himself, to save his country, as a CIA agent soon loses all of his blood, as Princess Dolma decide to actually make an announcement about everything. It's played by Padar United, which Princess Domo decided not to cry, but meanwhile, though I have to admit, seeing that all is well that ends well in the end. However, Amy and Dolma were actually having talked about who they love. However, as Amy explained that she wanted to give her true feelings to Lupin. I think I'm in love with you, Amy said. That's Geoman flinch of it, Jigen try not to laugh. I beg your pardon, Sound Blaster said in vehicle form, not even believing what he's hearing. Look, Amy, the thing is, we've been trying not to sound it awkward. Whenever I'm scared or angry, your face is the first thing that comes to my mind. If that is the first thing, I draw a conclusion based on that. The most illogical conclusion, I'm in love with you, Amy said. But I don't think love is more than you can analyze logically, Lupin said. The day is that when I become a better woman than Fujiko, I will require an answer. Alright, Amy said. Alright, Lupin said. Meanwhile, outside of the borders, Zenigata wanted to know what exactly happened between Portugal and Lupin, which however, a flashback happened after the plane crashed, the airship crashed only. Luckily, Lupin was able to survive it and taking the bloody tear back. Only to say these full of words before going off. Sorry, but I'm taking the bloody tear away. But you're not the one I love, Lupin said before running off. As the flashback ended, he ran away, Fujiko said. Well, he's a thief after all, Zenigata said. As Fujiko lied about saying that she hated him while driving off in a motorcycle. And this is the end of third movie of this, What If? I hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.